My name is Maya. I'm 28 years old, and I've been wearing a hearing aid since I was 6 years old. A severe ear infection took most of my hearing, but I learned to live with it. I got used to the stares, the questions, the people who talked slower like I couldn't understand English. What I never expected was that the person who would betray me the most would be the man I loved for 3 years. That night when he got down on one knee and gently removed my hearing aid, thinking I wouldn't hear a thing, he had no idea my ears had healed just 1 week earlier. And I heard every single word he said before that moment. Before I tell you what happened that night, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your city in the comments below. And if you've ever had someone betray your trust, hit that like button so I know I'm not alone. Subscribe because what comes next will show you exactly how I handled it. Now let me take you back to where it all started. I was 6 years old when the infection hit. My mom noticed I kept turning up the television volume and asking her to repeat herself. By the time we got to the doctor, the damage was done. The bacteria had attacked the delicate structures in my inner ear, leaving me with 70% hearing loss in both ears. I remember sitting in that sterile office watching my mother cry while the audiologist fitted me with my first pair of hearing aids. They were bulky beige and made me look different from all the other kids at school. Elementary school was brutal. Kids called me robot ears. They'd sneak up behind me and clap testing if I could hear them. During group projects, classmates would talk without facing me, making it impossible for me to read their lips. I learned to compensate. I became an expert at reading body language, at filling in the gaps when I missed words. I sat in the front row of every class, watched teachers' mouths more than the board, and studied twice as hard as everyone else just to keep up. But I refused to let my hearing define me. I joined the art club in middle school, discovered I had a talent for graphic design. I made a few close friends who understood that they needed to face me when speaking, who didn't mind repeating themselves. By high school, I'd built a shell of confidence. I wore my hair down to hide the hearing aids, but I stopped apologizing for asking people to speak up. College was liberating. I chose Portland State University for their excellent graphic design program. Living in a dorm forced me to advocate for myself in ways I never had before. I had to explain to roommates why I needed them to stomp on the floor to get my attention instead of calling my name. I invested in alarm clocks that vibrated my pillow. I learned American Sign Language, even though I wasn't completely deaf, because it gave me another way to communicate when environments were too noisy for my hearing aids to filter out background sound. I graduated with honors at 22. Got hired at a small design studio in downtown Portland 6 months later. By 28, I had my own apartment in the Pearl District, a solid group of friends, and a career I loved. My life wasn't perfect, but it was mine. I'd stopped waiting for someone to accept me despite my disability. I'd accepted myself. That's where I was 3 years ago when I met Ethan at an art gallery opening. One of my designs was being featured in a local artist showcase, a poster series about resilience. I was standing in front of my work nursing a glass of cheap white wine when he approached. He was handsome in that clean-cut professional way. 31 years old, he told me later. He worked in finance, wore tailored suits, had perfect teeth. But what struck me wasn't his looks. It was that he looked me straight in the eyes when he introduced himself. He didn't glance at my hearing aids. Didn't do that thing people do where they notice them, look away quickly, then pretend they didn't notice. We talked for an hour. He asked about my work, really listened when I explained the concept behind my designs. When the gallery got crowded and noisier, he suggested we step outside. We sat on a bench in the cooling September air, and he told me about his job at an investment firm, about growing up in Seattle, about his love for hiking and terrible attempts at cooking. When I mentioned my hearing aids, casually explaining that I might need him to repeat things in noisy environments, he just nodded. Over the following months, I noticed how he adapted without making it a big deal. He learned to face me when speaking. He'd touch my shoulder gently to get my attention instead of calling my name from another room. When we watched movies, he always turned on subtitles without me asking. We fell into a relationship easily. He took me to Cannon Beach for our first weekend trip, where we walked along the shore at low tide and he didn't complain when I couldn't hear him over the crash of waves. We had picnics at Washington Park, lying on blankets and talking for hours. He introduced me to his friends as my beautiful girlfriend, never adding qualifiers or explanations about my hearing. His family was welcoming too. His mother, Patricia, lived in a big house in the West Hills. She hugged me the first time we met, asked thoughtful questions about my work, complimented my dress. I felt like I'd finally found someone who saw me as a whole person, not as a disability with a girl attached. 18 months into our relationship, my audiologist mentioned a new treatment option. Medical technology had advanced significantly. There was a procedure combining cochlear implant technology with regenerative stem cell therapy that was showing remarkable success rates in restoring hearing for people with my specific type of damage. It wasn't cheap. The initial consultation alone was $300, but my insurance would cover 60% of the procedure, which would run about $40,000 total. I was terrified. What if it didn't work? What if I got my hopes up only to be disappointed? I'd lived with hearing aids for 22 years. I'd adapted. Did I really want to risk surgery for a chance at something I'd learned to live without? Ethan was supportive. He held my hand during the consultation, asked the doctor questions I was too nervous to voice. That night over Thai food in my apartment, he said, "Whatever you decide, I'm here. If you want to try it, I'll be there for every appointment. If you decide not to, that's okay too. You're perfect exactly as you are." I cried. Not sad tears, but grateful ones. I'd never had someone be so unconditionally supportive. I decided to go through with it. Did 3 months of research, read every medical journal article I could find, joined online support groups of people who'd had similar procedures. The success rate was 87%. Those were good odds. The surgery was scheduled for a Monday morning 2 weeks ago. Ethan offered to help pay the $16,000 my insurance wouldn't cover. I was touched but declined. I had savings, and I'd received a settlement years ago from a lawsuit related to the original infection. When I was 8, my parents had sued the medical practice that misdiagnosed my initial ear infection, delaying treatment and causing permanent damage. The settlement, $150,000, had been put in a trust. I'd gotten access to it at 21 and had been careful with it, using it only for education and emergencies. This felt like the right use. The surgery lasted 4 hours. I woke up groggy with thick bandages wrapped around my head. Ethan was there holding my hand. I couldn't hear anything through the bandages and the anesthesia fog. The doctor said it would take several days for the swelling to go down before they could assess success. Wednesday afternoon. 4 days post-surgery, the doctor unwrapped the bandages. My ears felt strange, sensitive to air for the first time in my memory. The doctor did a preliminary hearing test, asked me to identify sounds while facing away from him. A snap, a whistle, his voice saying my name. I heard them, all of them, clearly. The doctor smiled. "Your hearing is at 95% capacity. The procedure was completely successful." I burst into tears. The nurse's shoes squeaked on the linoleum. I heard it. A phone rang down the hall. I heard it. The doctor's pen clicked. I heard it. 22 years of muffled, incomplete sound, and suddenly the world was in high definition. I called my mother from the parking lot, hearing her voice with a clarity I'd never experienced. She cried too, said she'd been praying for this outcome. I drove home in a daze, windows down, listening to the wind and traffic, and the radio playing a song I could actually understand every lyric of. That night I almost called Ethan to tell him. But something stopped me. Our 3-year anniversary was coming up the following Saturday. I wanted to surprise him. I imagined the moment. We'd be at dinner and I'd casually take off my hearing aids and say, "I don't need these anymore. I can hear you perfectly now." I pictured his face, the joy and surprise. It would be perfect. So I kept wearing the hearing aids when I saw him, even though I didn't need them anymore. It was strange hearing everything clearly but pretending I couldn't. But I told myself it was worth it for the surprise. Friday evening, Ethan texted me. "Dinner tomorrow night, somewhere special. Dress nice." I smiled at my phone. He remembered our anniversary. 3 years together, and he was planning something romantic. I texted back a yes with 3 heart emojis. Saturday, I spent the afternoon getting ready. I chose my favorite navy blue dress, the one that hit just above the knee and made me feel elegant. Paired it with silver heels I'd bought on sale but never had occasion to wear. I curled my hair, did my makeup carefully, and put on my hearing aids one last time. Tomorrow I thought I'd put them in a drawer and never need them again. Ethan picked me up at 6 o'clock sharp. He was wearing a charcoal gray suit, crisp white shirt, no tie. He looked good. Nervous maybe, but I attributed that to anniversary jitters. He kissed my cheek, told me I looked beautiful, and held open the car door for me. We drove through the city as the sun set, painting the sky orange and pink. He held my hand across the center console, made small talk about his week at work, a difficult client, a project deadline. I talked about a logo redesign I was working on for a local coffee roaster. Normal couple conversation. Comfortable. The restaurant was called The Observatory. I'd heard of it but never been. It sat on a hill overlooking the city, all floor-to-ceiling windows and modern architecture. The hostess led us to a corner table away from other diners with a view of downtown Portland's lights beginning to twinkle as dusk deepened. Candles flickered on our table. The menu was prix-fixe 5 courses. Ethan ordered a bottle of wine, something French that I pretended to appreciate, but honestly couldn't tell from the $10 bottles I usually bought. The first course arrived. Seared scallops with a citrus reduction. Ethan asked about my week, complimented my dress again, seemed attentive. I was happy. This was nice. Romantic. Exactly what I'd hoped for. But then his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and something shifted in his expression. Just for a second, but I caught it. A tightness around his eyes. Sorry, he said. Work call. I need to take this. He stood, phone already at his ear, and walked toward the balcony area off the main dining room. It was maybe 15 feet from our table, separated by glass doors he left slightly ajar. Before my surgery, I wouldn't have heard a thing. The ambient noise of the restaurant, the distance, the doors, all would have made it impossible. But now, with my hearing fully restored, I could hear him clearly. Yeah, everything's on track. Tonight's the night. His voice was different, harder, not the warm tone he used with me. I told myself it was just work stress. He'd mentioned a difficult client. This was probably related. He listened to whoever was on the other end, then said, I know. Just trust me. It'll be fine. He came back to the table, slipping his phone into his jacket pocket, smiled at me. Sorry about that. Client emergency. I nodded, took a sip of wine, tried to ignore the small knot forming in my stomach. The second course came. Butternut squash soup. Ethan seemed distracted now, kept checking his phone under the table. I saw the screen light up his face in the dim restaurant. He was texting someone. Everything okay, I asked. He looked up quickly. Yeah, sorry. Just some issues I need to sort out later. Nothing to worry about. But his smile didn't reach his eyes. I knew that look. I'd been reading faces, searching for cues my entire life. Something was off. The main course arrived. Filet mignon for him, herb-crusted salmon for me. We ate mostly in silence. He complimented the food. I agreed. The conversation felt stilted now, nothing like the easy flow we'd had in the car. Then his phone rang again. Not a buzz, a full ring. He looked at the screen and I saw genuine alarm cross his face before he masked it. I'm so sorry, babe. I really need to take this. Just 5 minutes. He was already standing, already walking away. This time he went out to the actual balcony outside the glass doors. Farther away. But not far enough. I could still hear every word. Hey, Mom, he said. My heart skipped. He was calling his mother Mom, not Patricia, which he only did in private. This wasn't a work call. Yeah, I'm with her right now, he continued. His mother's voice was faint but audible. So you're really doing this? Yeah, Ethan said. Got the ring and everything. She has no idea. My breath caught. He was going to propose. Tonight. The special dinner, the nice restaurant, it all made sense. Joy started to bloom in my chest, but then he kept talking. And you're sure about the money? His mother asked. The trust fund will transfer once you're married. That's what the lawyer said, Ethan replied. Married by 32 or I lose everything. I've got 4 months. The joy died instantly, replaced by cold confusion. Trust fund lawyer. What was he talking about? And she really doesn't suspect anything, his mother asked. Ethan laughed. Actually laughed. Come on, Mom. She can't even hear properly. This whole thing has been easier than I thought. The words hit me like a physical blow. I gripped the edge of the table, felt the room tilt slightly. This couldn't be real. This couldn't be happening. But it was. And there was more. Plus, Ethan said, his voice carrying clearly across the balcony, there's the life insurance policy I took out on her last year. She signed it, thinking it was apartment paperwork. Life insurance policy. My mind raced back. Last summer, Ethan had brought over a stack of papers. Said the landlord needed updated information for the lease renewal. Emergency contacts, updated income verification, standard stuff. I'd signed where he indicated trusting him completely. I'd been rushing late for a meeting with a client. Hadn't read the fine print. Oh God. What had I signed? You're terrible, his mother said, but her tone was amused, almost proud. Hey, gotta secure the future, right? Ethan said. 3 years of playing the supportive boyfriend is about to pay off. Playing. 3 years of playing. Once we're married, he continued, I'll have access to her disability settlement money too. She got a big payout from that childhood accident lawsuit. My stomach dropped. How did he know about that? I'd never told him the exact amount. I'd mentioned the lawsuit in passing months into our relationship, but never the figure. Never told him it was sitting in a separate account, $150,000 I'd barely touched. Who else had known? My parents. My lawyer at the time. And I'd signed financial disclosure forms when we'd applied for an apartment together a year ago. Forms I'd filled out honestly, listing all my assets because I'd trusted him. Because I'd thought we were building a life together. He'd seen those forms. He'd known exactly what I was worth. The conversation continued, but I could barely process it through the ringing in my ears. Not the old ringing of damaged hearing, but the new ringing of shock of betrayal so complete I couldn't catch my breath. Ethan said something about timelines, about needing to be married within 4 months to access his trust fund before he turned 32. His mother reminded him to keep up the act. He assured her he would. Okay, Mom, he finally said. Gotta go. Wish me luck. He ended the call and stood there for a moment, shoulders back, taking a breath like an actor preparing to go on stage. Then he turned, walked back into the restaurant, and by the time he reached our table, his face was transformed. Warm, loving, the perfect boyfriend. Sorry about that, he said, sliding into his chair. Work stuff. All sorted now. I stared at him. This man I'd loved for 3 years. This man I'd trusted with my vulnerabilities, my fears, my body, my heart. He was a stranger. Worse than a stranger. He was a predator who'd seen my disability as an opportunity. The waiter brought dessert. Chocolate lava cake to share. Ethan didn't touch it. Instead, he reached across the table and took my hand. Maya, he said, these past 3 years have been incredible. I said nothing. Couldn't speak. Could barely breathe. Let's take a walk outside, he suggested. I want to show you something. I nodded mechanically. Stood when he stood. Let him guide me with a hand on the small of my back out of the dining room through the lobby to the garden area behind the restaurant. It was beautiful, I noted distantly. String lights hung between trees. The view of the city stretched out below us, a carpet of lights. Romantic. Perfect for a proposal. Perfect for a lie. Ethan led me to a spot under an old oak tree. The bark was rough, gnarled with age. In the distance I could hear traffic, the faint sound of music from inside the restaurant, the whisper of wind through leaves. All sounds I'd been hearing clearly for a week now. All sounds he thought I couldn't hear. He stopped, turned to face me, took both my hands in his. Maya, he began, these 3 years have been incredible. His voice was gentle, sincere. If I hadn't heard that phone call, I would have believed every word. You've taught me so much about strength, about not giving up, about seeing beauty in unexpected places. I wanted to vomit. Every word was a performance, every syllable calculated. He let go of my hands and lowered himself onto one knee, reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "Before I ask you the most important question of my life," he said, "I want to do something." He stood back up, stepped close to me, and reached toward my ear. His fingers were gentle as they found the hearing aid, the piece of plastic and electronics that had been part of me for 22 years. "I know you've always heard me with this," he said softly, his fingers touching the device. "But tonight, I want you to hear me with your heart." He carefully removed the hearing aid from my right ear, then my left, slipped them into his pocket. He was smiling, thinking this was romantic, thinking I was now in complete silence, dependent on reading his lips for whatever came next. He had no idea I could hear the rustle of fabric as he knelt again, could hear his knee crack slightly, could hear his breathing slightly elevated from nervousness. He opened the velvet box. Inside was a ring. Diamond platinum setting, probably cost him a few $1,000s. An investment, I realized. An investment that would pay off with access to my settlement money and whatever trust fund he stood to inherit. Before he spoke the proposal out loud, before he opened his mouth to form the words he thought I'd have to lip read, he muttered under his breath, "Come on, just say yes. Need this done by midnight to call the lawyer." Then his face transformed again. He looked up at me with eyes that seemed full of love and spoke clearly, carefully, so I could read his lips. "Maya, will you marry me?" He paused, waiting, ring held up like an offering. "I promise to love you, support you for the rest of our lives," he said, each word enunciated perfectly for the deaf girl he thought was standing before him. The rest of our lives. The phrase echoed in my mind. He didn't mean it. He meant until he had access to my money. Maybe not even that long. I thought about the life insurance policy, about how I'd signed it without reading about how I was worth more to him dead than alive. 3 years. 3 years of my life I'd given this man. 3 years of believing I'd found someone who loved me for me. 3 years of letting my guard down, of being vulnerable, of trusting. All of it had been a con. I looked at him kneeling there in his expensive suit, holding a ring that was really just a key to unlock my bank accounts. I thought about saying no, about exposing him right there, about screaming every terrible thing I'd heard. But something stopped me, some instinct for self-preservation, some voice in my head that said, "Be smart about this. Don't give away your advantage." He thought I couldn't hear. That was power. Information was power. And I needed to think, to plan, to figure out how to protect myself legally, financially, emotionally. So I did what he expected. I let my eyes fill with tears. Real tears, though not of joy. I nodded slowly, like I was overcome with emotion. Ethan's face broke into a huge smile. He stood, slipped the ring onto my finger. It was too big, I noticed. He'd guessed at my size. Hadn't cared enough to find out for sure. He pulled me into a hug, held me tight. Over his shoulder I could see the city lights blurring through my tears. "You've made me the happiest man alive," he said into my hair. Liar, I thought. Liar, liar, liar. We went back into the restaurant. Ethan flagged down the waiter, announced our engagement. The staff brought champagne on the house, other diners applauded. I smiled, played the happy fiancé, let Ethan kiss me while strangers congratulated us. All the while my mind was racing. What do I do? Who do I call? How do I get out of this? Ethan drove me home around 10. Walked me to my door, kissed me goodnight. "I'll call you tomorrow," he said. "We need to start planning. My mom will want to help. She's going to be so excited." I bet she is, I thought. Excited about the money I represented. I nodded, smiled, waved, as he walked back to his car. Waited until his taillights disappeared around the corner. Then I went inside, locked the door, and collapsed on my sofa. For a long time I just sat there staring at the ring on my finger. It caught the light from the street lamp outside my window, sparkled mockingly. Then I cried. Not quiet tears, but huge gulping sobs. 3 years. He'd spent 3 years lying to me. Every I love you had been false. Every moment of tenderness had been calculated. He'd seen my hearing aids and seen opportunity. Seen vulnerability he could exploit. After I'd cried myself empty, I wiped my face and made a decision. I wasn't going to be a victim. I'd spent my whole life compensating, adapting, fighting for what I needed. I wasn't going to let Ethan win. I picked up my phone and called Lucy. She'd been my roommate sophomore year of college, studied pre-law while I'd studied design. We'd stayed close after graduation. She was a lawyer now, working at a firm that specialized in family law and fraud cases. She answered on the third ring, voice groggy. "Maya, it's almost 11. What's wrong? I need your help," I said. And then I told her everything. The surgery, the restored hearing, Ethan's proposal, and most importantly, the phone call I'd overheard. Lucy was silent for a long moment after I finished. Then she said in a voice tight with fury, "That bastard. We need evidence. I've got the ring," I said. And I heard everything he said. But I didn't record it. "We'll work with what we have," Lucy said. "First thing Monday morning, we're filing a police report about the insurance fraud. Signing someone's name to a life insurance policy without their informed consent is a felony. Then we're getting you a forensic accountant to trace any financial access he might have gained." "What about the proposal?" I asked. "Do I keep pretending?" "For now, yes," Lucy said. "Don't let him know you heard anything. We need to gather evidence, build a case. String him along for a few days while we get our ducks in a row. Can you do that?" I thought about seeing Ethan pretending everything was fine, letting him kiss me while knowing what he really thought of me. My stomach turned, but I nodded even though she couldn't see me. "I can do it," I said. "That's my girl," Lucy said. "Tomorrow's Sunday. Come to my place for lunch. Bring any paperwork you have. We'll go through everything." I hung up and sat in the darkness of my apartment. Across the room, my hearing aids sat on the coffee table where I'd placed them after Ethan dropped me off. Small, beige, obsolete. I'd worn them for 22 years. They'd been a part of me for so long. And Ethan had thought they made me weak, made me easy to fool. He was about to learn how wrong he was. Sunday morning, I woke with swollen eyes and a headache. Made coffee, forced myself to eat toast even though I had no appetite. Then I started searching through my file cabinet for paperwork. I found the lease renewal documents from last summer, flipped through them, reading carefully this time, and there it was, sandwiched between the lease and the renter's insurance forms. A life insurance policy application. My signature at the bottom, clear as day. Beneficiary: Ethan James Morrison. Policy amount $500,000. $500,000. If I died, he'd get $500,000. Plus my settlement money. Plus access to whatever trust fund he stood to inherit once we were married. I took pictures of every page with my phone. Then I kept digging. Found bank statements from our joint account, the one we'd opened for shared expenses like groceries and utilities. I'd been putting in my fair share every month. According to the statements, so had he. But I noticed something odd. Several large withdrawals. $2,000 here, $1,500 there. When I looked at the dates, they corresponded with trips he'd said were for work. A conference in San Francisco. A client meeting in Chicago. Had those trips been real? Or had he been using our joint money to fund personal vacations while I worked late nights on freelance projects to keep my half of the bills paid? I photographed all of it. Every statement, every withdrawal, every piece of evidence that Ethan Morrison was not who he claimed to be. At noon, I drove to Lucy's apartment in the Alphabet District. She lived in a renovated brownstone second floor with huge windows and bookshelves covering every wall. She opened the door, took one look at my face, and pulled me into a hug. After a moment, she stepped back and said, "Okay, let's destroy this guy." We spent 4 hours going through everything. Lucy made notes, asked questions, built a timeline. She called a friend who worked in insurance fraud investigation, got advice on how to proceed. Called another friend who was a forensic accountant, set up a meeting for Tuesday. The life insurance policy is the smoking gun, Lucy said. He forged your signature, or at the very least obtained it under false pretenses. That's fraud. We can press charges. What about the trust fund thing, I asked. Can we prove that's why he's marrying me? Harder to prove, intent, Lucy admitted. But if we can show a pattern of financial manipulation, it strengthens the case. Did you sign anything else? Any joint credit cards, loan applications? Anything I thought back? There was the apartment application a year ago. I'd listed all my assets, including the settlement money, on the financial disclosure form. Do you have a copy? Lucy asked. I shook my head. The landlord kept the originals, but I can request copies. Do that, Lucy said. Tomorrow. And in the meantime, we need you to act normal. If Ethan suspects you know anything, he might bolt. Or worse, try to accelerate his plans. The thought made my blood run cold. Accelerate his plans. Like the life insurance policy. If he needed money quickly, the fastest way to get it would be if I had an accident. I'll be careful, I promised. Lucy walked me to the door. As I was leaving, she grabbed my arm. Maya, I'm serious. Don't be alone with him. Not until we have everything in place. Meet him in public places only. Tell me where you're going every time. Check in regularly. You think he'd actually hurt me? Lucy's expression was grim. He's already committed fraud. Spent 3 years lying to you. I don't know what he's capable of, and I don't want to find out the hard way. That night, Ethan called. I almost didn't answer, but Lucy had said to act normal. So I picked up forced cheerfulness into my voice. Hi, I said. There's my beautiful fiancé, Ethan said. How are you feeling today? Still floating on cloud 9? Something like that, I managed. He wanted to meet for lunch Monday to start discussing wedding plans. I suggested a busy cafe near my office instead of his apartment like he'd proposed. He agreed easily. We talked for 20 minutes. He was charming, attentive, everything he'd been for 3 years. And now I could hear the falseness in it. The slightly rehearsed quality to his compliments. The way he steered conversation toward practical matters like joint bank accounts and updating beneficiaries on my work retirement account. Every word made me sicker. Monday morning, I called the insurance company that had issued the life insurance policy. Explained that I needed to review the policy details. They faxed over a copy to Lucy's office. Lucy called me 2 hours later. Maya, she said, this is worse than we thought. How? The application was submitted online using your email address. They have digital records of the entire process. Someone logged into your email, filled out the application, and electronically signed your name. Ethan had my email password. I'd given it to him a year ago when I'd been traveling and needed him to check for an important message from a client. I'd meant to change the password after, but had forgotten. We can prove unauthorized access, Lucy said. This is identity theft on top of insurance fraud. I met Ethan for lunch at the cafe. Smiled when he kissed my cheek. Admired the ring on my finger when he pointed it out. Discussed potential wedding dates while internally screaming. He suggested June. Said his trust fund would transfer on his 32nd birthday in early June, and wouldn't it be romantic to get married the same month I agreed? Said June sounded perfect. Watched him relax, believing I was falling for every lie. Tuesday, I met with the forensic accountant Lucy had recommended. Her name was Sharon, a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and zero-nonsense demeanor. We sat in her office downtown, and I gave her access to all my financial records. She found things I'd never noticed. The joint account withdrawals were just the start. Ethan had also opened a credit card in my name 8 months ago. The statements had been going to his address, which he'd listed as my secondary mailing address without my knowledge. He'd racked up $12,000 in charges. Flights, hotels, expensive dinners, none of which I'd benefited from. He's been living a second life on your credit, Sharon said, and you're legally liable for this debt. Can we prove I didn't authorize it? I asked. The application has a digital signature, Sharon said. We can compare it to known samples of your real signature. If they don't match, that's fraud. And even if they do match, if we can prove you didn't knowingly submit the application, it's still identity theft. I felt dizzy. The scope of Ethan's betrayal kept expanding. It wasn't just the proposal, the trust fund, the insurance policy. He'd been systematically stealing from me for months. Wednesday, Lucy filed a police report. We brought all the evidence: the insurance policy, the credit card application, bank records, email logs showing unauthorized access. The detective assigned to the case was a woman named Rodriguez. She reviewed everything with a frown deepening on her face. "This is a clear-cut case of identity theft and fraud," she said. "We'll need to bring him in for questioning." "How long will that take?" I asked. "A few days," she said. "We need to verify some of the digital evidence coordinate with the insurance company and credit card issuer. I'd say by Friday we'll have enough to make an arrest." Friday. I just needed to keep up the act until Friday. Thursday evening, Ethan wanted to have dinner at his place. I made an excuse about work deadlines. Suggested we meet for coffee Saturday morning instead. He sounded annoyed but agreed. That night I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my phone on the nightstand with Lucy's number on speed dial. Every sound made me jump. Every car passing on the street could be Ethan coming to confront me to accelerate his plans. I didn't sleep. Friday morning, Detective Rodriguez called. "We're bringing him in this afternoon. Can you come to the station? I'll be there," I said. Lucy met me outside the police station at 2 o'clock. We went inside together, were led to a small conference room. At 3:15, they brought Ethan in. He was in handcuffs, flanked by 2 officers. When he saw me, confusion crossed his face, then understanding, then pure rage. "You," he started, but his lawyer, who'd met him at the station, cut him off. "Don't say anything," the lawyer advised. We all sat. Detective Rodriguez laid out the evidence: the forged insurance policy, the unauthorized credit card, the email access, the pattern of financial manipulation. Ethan's face went from red to white. He looked at me with something like hatred. "You were supposed to be deaf," he said, ignoring his lawyer's advice. "You couldn't have heard." "My ears healed," I said calmly. 3 weeks ago, I heard every word of your phone call with your mother at the restaurant." His mouth opened and closed. No words came out. "Mr. Morrison," Detective Rodriguez said, "you're being charged with insurance fraud, identity theft, credit card fraud, and unauthorized access to electronic communications. Do you understand these charges?" His lawyer started talking about bail, about fighting the charges. But Ethan just stared at me. 3 years, he finally said. "I wasted 3 years. Wasted," I repeated. "You wasted? I trusted you. I loved you. And you saw me as nothing but a paycheck you could manipulate because you thought I couldn't hear your lies." The lawyer was pulling at Ethan's arm now, trying to get him to stop talking. But Ethan seemed unable to stop. "You were easy," he spat. "Poor deaf girl, so grateful someone would love her. You made it easy." Lucy's hand on my arm was the only thing that kept me in my seat. I wanted to lunge across the table, wanted to scream, but I stayed still, stayed calm. Detective Rodriguez stood. "Mr. Morrison, you have the right to remain silent. I suggest you use it." They led him away. His lawyer followed, already on his phone calling someone. Lucy and I sat in the conference room for a long moment after they left. "It's over," she said quietly. "Not quite," Detective Rodriguez said, coming back into the room. "We need you to file a formal statement and there'll be a court hearing. But the evidence is solid. He's not getting out of this." The hearing was set for the following Wednesday. In the meantime, I had to untangle my life from Ethan's, close the joint bank account, file disputes on the fraudulent credit card charges, changed every password, security question, and PIN I'd ever shared with him. I moved apartments. Couldn't stay in the place where he'd stood in my kitchen, kissed me in my hallway, lied to me in every room. Lucy helped me pack. My parents drove down from Seattle to help move furniture. My mother held me while I cried over a photo album of our trips together. All those memories poisoned now by the truth. "You're stronger than this," she said. "You've overcome so much. This is just one more thing you'll get through." Wednesday arrived. I dressed carefully in a gray suit, pulled my hair back, looked in the mirror and barely recognized myself. I'd lost weight, had circles under my eyes. But there was something else there too, something hard and determined. The courtroom was small. Ethan was already there with his lawyer wearing an orange jumpsuit. He didn't look at me when I walked in. The prosecutor laid out the case, presented evidence of the forged insurance policy worth $500,000, the unauthorized credit card with $12,000 in fraudulent charges, the email access logs, the pattern of manipulation. Ethan's lawyer tried to argue that I'd given him permission to handle financial matters, that the signatures were legitimate, that it was all a misunderstanding between an engaged couple. The prosecutor presented the recording of my statement, my testimony about the phone call I'd overheard, the conversation with his mother about the trust fund, about the timeline, about me being easy to manipulate because of my hearing loss. The lawyer had no response to that. The judge reviewed everything, looked at Ethan with undisguised disgust. "Mr. Morrison," she said, "you systematically defrauded Ms. Hayes over the course of several years. You exploited her disability for financial gain. You forged legal documents, stole her identity, and endangered her financial security. This court finds you guilty on all counts." Ethan's face crumpled. "Sentencing is set for 3 weeks from today," the judge continued. "Bail is denied. You'll remain in custody until then." As they led him away, he looked back at me once. I met his gaze steadily. Didn't look away. Outside the courtroom, Lucy hugged me. "You did it," she said. "You got him." "We got him," I corrected. The prosecutor joined us, a woman named Williams, who'd handled the case with fierce efficiency. She shook my hand. "The insurance company is voiding the policy," she said, "and the credit card company is removing all charges from your account. You won't be held liable for any of his fraud." I nodded, feeling some of the weight lift from my shoulders. "And we're pursuing charges related to the trust fund scheme," Williams continued. "His mother knew about the fraud. She's being charged as an accessory." "Good," I said, and meant it. Patricia had welcomed me into her home, smiled at me, all while knowing her son was scamming me. She deserved consequences, too. 3 weeks later, Ethan was sentenced to 8 years in prison. His mother got 2 years for her role. I didn't attend the sentencing. Didn't want to see his face again. Lucy called me afterward with the news. "It's really over," she said. "Yeah," I said. "It is." The first few weeks after everything ended were hard. I'd wake up and forget just for a moment that Ethan was gone, that the relationship had been a lie. Then I'd remember, and the grief would hit fresh. Because it was grief. Not for Ethan, not for the liar and fraud he'd turned out to be, but for the man I'd thought he was. For the relationship I'd believed we had. For 3 years of my life I'd spent building something that had never been real. I went to therapy, found a counselor who specialized in trauma and betrayal. We talked through my trust issues, my fears about future relationships, my anger at myself for not seeing the signs. But there weren't signs, my therapist said. He was a skilled manipulator. He targeted your vulnerability deliberately. This is not your fault. Intellectually, I knew that. Emotionally, it took longer to believe. My friends rallied around me. Lucy came over every Saturday with takeout and movies. My college roommate flew in from Boston for a long weekend. My parents called every other day just to check in. Slowly, I started to rebuild. Threw myself into work, took on bigger clients. The coffee roaster whose logo I'd been redesigning hired me for a full branding package. The work was challenging, consuming exactly what I needed. I started running in the mornings. Just a mile at first, then 2, then 5. The physical exhaustion helped quiet my mind. And running with my fully restored hearing was a revelation. I could hear my footsteps, my breathing, the birds in the trees. Music through earbuds sounded crystalline clear. 3 months after the trial, I went on a date. Just coffee with a guy Lucy knew from law school. He was nice, kind, made me laugh. But when he reached across the table to touch my hand, I flinched. He pulled back immediately. "Sorry," he said. "Too fast." "No," I said. "It's not you. I'm just not ready." He understood. We finished our coffee as friends. 6 months after the trial, I finally felt like I could breathe again. The constant anxiety had faded. I could go whole days without thinking about Ethan, about what he'd done. I moved into a new apartment, this one in a different neighborhood entirely. Fresh start, clean slate. I decorated it exactly how I wanted. Bold colors, art on every wall, plants in every window. I was learning to be alone without being lonely. Learning that I didn't need someone else to validate my worth. I'd spent so long thinking my hearing loss made me less than made me someone who should be grateful for scraps of affection. Ethan had exploited that insecurity. Never again. One afternoon, I was cleaning out boxes from the move and found my old hearing aids. The ones I'd worn for 22 years. The ones Ethan had removed during his proposal, thinking it was romantic. I held them in my palm, these small pieces of plastic and electronics that had been part of my identity for so long. They'd helped me navigate a world that wasn't built for people like me. They'd been tools, aids, assistants, but they'd also become a symbol to others. To Ethan, they'd meant weakness, vulnerability, someone to exploit. I put them in a box labeled donations. Someone else could use them now. Someone who needed them. I didn't. A year after the trial, I was sitting in a park on a Sunday afternoon sketching in a notebook. It was one of those perfect Portland days, warm but not hot sun filtering through the trees. A man sat down on the other end of the bench. Didn't speak, just pulled out his own sketchbook and started drawing. After a while, he glanced over at my work. "That's really good," he said. "Thanks," I replied. We talked for a few minutes. His name was David. He taught art at a local community college. We compared favorite artists, debated the merits of digital versus traditional media. As he was leaving, he asked if I'd like to get coffee sometime. I hesitated, then looked at him, really looked. He had kind eyes, an easy smile, and I'd heard something in his voice when he talked about his students. Genuine passion, genuine warmth. "Sure," I said. "Coffee sounds nice." We met the following week. Then again the week after that. He was patient with my caution, understanding when I needed space. Didn't push, didn't rush. On our 5th date, he asked about the faint scar behind my ear from the surgery. I told him the whole story. The childhood infection, the years with hearing aids, the successful procedure, and even about Ethan, though, I kept it brief. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he just said, "I'm sorry that happened to you, but I'm glad you can hear me tell you that your strength is incredible." It was the first time someone had acknowledged what I'd been through without making it the defining thing about me. David saw me as whole, heard, valuable. We took it slow. Months of dating before I introduced him to my parents. More months before I stayed over at his place. I was careful, maybe overly so, but David never complained. Sometimes the best gift is hearing the truth even when it hurts. I'd heard Ethan's truth that night at the restaurant. Heard what he really thought of me, what he really wanted. And it had destroyed me for a while. But it had also saved me. Because only then could I decide what to do with it. And I chose to save myself. I chose to walk away from someone who saw me as a target. I chose to fight back, to gather evidence, to press charges. I chose not to be a victim. My hearing had been restored by surgery. But my sense of self-worth, my ability to trust, my belief in my own strength, that was restored by choice. Every day I choose to believe I deserve better. Deserve honesty. Deserve real love if and when it comes. And if it doesn't, I'm okay with that too. Because I have myself. And after everything, that's enough. Have you ever had someone betray your trust so completely that it changed how you saw the world? Drop a comment below and share your story. You're not alone in this. And if this story resonated with you, hit that like button. Subscribe to hear more stories about survival strength and coming out stronger on the other side. Share this with someone who needs to hear that they deserve better, that they're worth more than someone's scheme. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it reminds you that your voice matters, your truth matters, and you have the power to save yourself. Stay strong, stay true, and remember that healing is possible.